Hey everybody, my name's Glenn. Today I'm going to teach you how to build a cheap but good computer. First, let me tell you a couple components you're going to need to get started. The first one is the motherboard. This is going to be your key component. I'll go over a little bit. First, let me tell you about a couple other things. I've been hearing a lot of things on YouTube. People have been telling people how to build computers. They're leaving out a couple things that I think are important, so I'm letting you know about them. These right here are RAMs. Two of them for me. Then you have the CPU. I'm going to go ahead and go through detail and let you know what everything is in a minute. For me, I'm using a DVD-ROM. This, of course, is the heatsink with fan for my CPU. Of course, you're going to need a case. I'll show you that in a little bit. You're going to need a power supply. All your different adapters. We'll go over that in a few minutes also. If you're prepping them to using a floppy, you're going to need one of them too. One key component also is the hard drive. One thing also, you're going to need software. I'll go over that in a little bit. But first, let me tell you a little bit about this bad boy here. This motherboard we're using today, I just took it apart to show you how everything is. Let's start with the front panel. If you look right, if you look right here, you're going to see the mouse and the keyboard. Most of them have them, some don't. So when you're trying to get a motherboard, like I said, that's your key component, you got to know what all these are and if you need them. For this right here, we're going to move over to the USB slot. In this case, I have two, plenty enough for what I'm doing with it, and the Ethernet jack. If you don't have one of these on the motherboard, don't worry, I'll tell you about that in a second. Usually you don't have to worry about this. You don't have to worry about this one either unless you got an old printer. This one right here is your video card. Now I'm about to tell you a little something about that in a moment. You have your sound right here. This is also a different type of adapter. You don't have to worry about that. These guys right here, PCI slots. Now this is the basic motherboard. When you put it all together, if you wanted to add things, for instance, you don't have an Ethernet here, you would add one in the PCI slot. You don't have a sound card right here, or you do, you want to add another one right here. Whatever you wanted to add, you would add it here or through the USBs right here. Now, the thing about these is they do make a newer motherboard that actually has a PCI slot for those that don't have the video cards. It's a great way to up on video card if you're into graphics and stuff like that. Basically, it would sit back a little bit, it would be black or blue, and then you would have the PCI. Usually it's PCI or PCI times 16 or 2.0 16, but you don't really have to worry about that right now. But some things you're going to have to worry about when you're getting this software. Let me talk a little bit about these. These are software disks. You're going to need to know about what type of software you're going to use, whether it's going to be Windows, Linux, or whatever. The bad thing about this is when you buy it, you can only put in one computer. There is a program out here, a online place that you can actually buy XP Professional, and I'll have to find out where it's at, to where you can put it on as many computers as you want, and it will be verified through Genius, so that way you can get the extras from Microsoft. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but this is important. Usually you can get them for about 50 bucks or something like that if you want to go with Vista, and I do recommend it. I love it. I use it in my main computer. Then you're going to be in a couple hundreds, but we're in a cheap range right now, so I would say if you have an old one, keep them, use them, go snatch a verification, product key off of the old one. Works as good too. Now, one thing you got to know when you're building the computer, the motherboard, I said, and I will repeat, is the main component. When you buy it, you got to know everything about it before you buy it. I don't care if you go on eBay, Amazon.com, Overstock, or if you buy it from a retail provider. Retail provider is expensive, but if you buy on eBay, highly recommended. Also with Amazon and Overstock.com, make sure you get the specs on it. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it in the future. Like I said, this is going to give you a detailed description of how to build a computer. Now, what I want to briefly tell you about is this guy right here. Give you a little better view there. This is chipset. All computers have them. Basically, on this one is a heatsink. Some of them do have fans. The preference of when you buy it is whether or not it has a heatsink or a fan. Why is that important? Because of the noise issue. If you don't want a loud computer, buy a heatsink. It does just as well. Excuse me. Now, I'm going to move over to the RAM. In this case, what I'm using is this old computer. It's either a 168 or a 194. Basically, that's what I'm telling you about the specs from your motherboard. When you get it, if you gotta search online or whatever, make sure you get all the specs. Make sure you write it all down. The reason why is right now, it will tell you how much RAM. Going back to the motherboard right here, it has 2 slots right here where the RAM sticks into place. Basically, this is simple. For other ones, newer motherboards, you will actually have 4, 6, or whatever. They'll be color coded. Basically, if you have 2 yellow and 2 black will be intersection, you would first use up the 2 yellow. Now, why is it important to have the information? You need to know how much your motherboards can support in RAM. In my case, I can support 2 gigs of RAM. Now, the thing about RAM is you gotta know 3 small steps. I got 2 RAMs, 2 slots. Each of these are a gig. Now, the thing about it is if I didn't know that my computer only supports 2 gigs of RAM, and if I put 3 or 4 or whatever in it, it's not going to run. It's not even going to turn on because it's too much. Same thing with another key. You gotta know if it's low or high density. For the most preference, if you had bought it from somebody that gave you all the description of it, it will tell you whether or not it actually takes a low or high density. If you're not sure, it's always best to go with the low density because it's more compatible with all computers. High density is cheaper. It works about the same, but it won't work in some computers. And if it does work, it won't work correctly if it only does a low density computer only. And the last one, how many gigs can it support? That's the main thing. You gotta know when you buy it what the pins are. This is a 190, so most of them are for the newer motherboards are 240. The only difference is you're going to need to know if it takes a DDR, DDR2, DDR3, whether it's a PC 5300, 4600, what the megahertz speed is. That's another thing I forgot about. The megahertz is actually you're going to need to know how many megahertz it's for. Most of the time when you buy them, you don't really need to know, but certain things like DDR2, if you have 500 or you do 667, if you put the 500 in there, it's not going to work as fast as the 662. Basically, that's it for the RAM. When you buy the motherboard, make sure it comes with an installation disc. If it doesn't come with an installation disc, make sure there is a way to actually access it. Whether you have to go online and download it from the manufacturer or whatever the case is. For me, my preference motherboard is actually Acer.